It's Lesbian Visibility Week, and we are taking this opportunity to talk about the word lesbian. For almost 11 years, our content on social media has been suppressed, blocked, taken down, and our ads have been rejected. Not because of the nature of our content, but because when you have the word lesbian in the name of your organization, it immediately gets flagged as NSFW content. And we all know that's because the word lesbian has been long appropriated by the adult industry as the most popular genre of pornography made for straight men. And we will get back to that later, I promise. But for now, let me just give you an idea of what it's like out there on social media. If you were to search the hashtag lesbian in Instagram, it says, no results found. But here's some beach photography if you're interested. If you were to go on TikTok, a lot of the content is made by actual lesbians for the lesbian community, but there is still plenty of faux sexualized lesbian content made for straight men. On YouTube, when I was logged into my account on my phone, I got a mix of real and faux content, and when I was in incognito mode on my desktop, the content is generally sensationalized clickbait. And then we head to the platform formerly known as Twitter. Well, just see for yourself. This is what happens when content is totally unmoderated. Content like this and all the content made in the last few decades is currently, right now, as we speak, feeding large language models and informing developing AI that this is what a lesbian is. The technology that is going to shape the trajectory of our world is taking all of this in. So what are we going to do? How did we get here? We are going to get into all of that and more this week, so please come back tomorrow for part 2. Welcome back to part 2 of Lesbians, Labels, and LLMs, where we talk about the future of the word lesbian. It's important that we go back to the beginning. Back in 1995, a sex worker named Danny Ash launched what is considered to be one of the earliest adult websites called Danny's Hard Drive, a website which she built by herself after reading the HTML Manual of Style. And although we love a self-taught coder, the success of Danny's website concept of paying for adult content brought a new boom of similar websites. Around that same time, search engines such as AltaVista, Yahoo, and Ask Jeeves were launched. Anyone else feel old looking at this yet? Anyway, in 1998, Google deployed PageRank. Now I want you to imagine it's 1998 and there is a website that is selling what Americans call biscuits. And then you have another website that is an informational page about what people in the UK call biscuits. Then let's say there are 3 websites that post food reviews about biscuits, but they're talking about the American biscuit linking back to this page. And although both websites are technically about biscuits, the American definition is deemed more authoritative because these websites are reinforcing that definition. And then Google deploys term frequency, TF for short, which ranks pages according to the frequency of the keyword appearing on that page. Now the UK page has mentions of the word biscuit on their site, but not nearly as much as the American e-commerce site because the word biscuit is in the title of the thousands of items on their shop, increasing their TF. And the higher the TF, the more relevant Google considers the page to be for that particular query, thus moving the US site to the top positions of the search page. But we're not talking about baked goods. We're talking about adult websites. And we're not talking about the word biscuit, we're talking about the word lesbian. And to illustrate how invested the adult industry is in the keyword lesbian, here's a graph of the top 5 categories searched on Pornhub in the last 10 years, and you will see that the word lesbian has never fallen below the number 3 spot. And side note, lesbian isn't even considered a gay category on their website. And while we're on the topic of Pornhub, it's worth noting that they are owned by MindGeek, a company that is comprised of all the largest distributors of all the most popular websites like Pornhub, RedTube, and YouPorn, as well as the largest adult content production studios like Brazzers, Digital Playground, and Reality Kings. The company that produces and distributes a good portion of the content found in the 6.8 million search queries related to porn, which is 25% of all internet searches, are generated today by those whose top category perpetuates the notion that lesbian relationships exist merely as a fetish for heterosexual men. And because we've been feeding this algorithm for years, that is why the word lesbian has been solidified as an NSFW keyword. But it goes beyond the public internet. Companies are perpetually trying to mitigate the loss of productivity. One of the ways they do this is that they block certain keywords that would be associated with websites that are considered a distraction, which is not surprising because according to Pornhub, their traffic spikes in the middle of the workday. So company servers ban certain words that mirror top keywords on adult sites in an effort to save workforce productivity. And it's also the reason that even some of our sponsors can't get our emails. And some of those top-ranking keywords for adult sites are funneled into social media platforms because most allow users as young as 13, and they don't want parents to delete their kids' accounts if they happen to stumble upon adult content when they may have just been looking for answers about their own identity. Because right now, out there in the world, there are so many young people who don't live in a home where sexuality is openly discussed, and they're looking for answers, and they deserve resources and community. Because as it stands, organizations like HRC, GLAAD, and even Lesbians Who Tech cannot compete financially when the keyword lesbian is a whopping $2.67 cost per click. I know this is a lot in a single video, but it was important for us to establish what led up to this. And now that we know how we got here, come back for part 3 tomorrow and we're going to talk about what we can do about it. Welcome back to the third and final installment of our series, Lesbians, Labels, and LLMs, where we discuss the future of the word lesbian. The last 2 videos, we went over the reality of the word lesbian on the internet and how we got here. In this video, we're going to talk about what we can do about it. Right now, AI is changing every facet of technology. And if we don't acknowledge the actions that led up to the discrimination of the word lesbian, AI is going to repeat history at a rapid pace and solidify the negative and imaginary stereotypes that have defined the word lesbian since the commercialization of the internet. To find answers, we turn to some of the biggest leaders in tech, business, and social justice at the San Francisco Summit last October and ask them for ideas about what we can do. And although high level, everyone we interviewed knew this was an issue, when presented with the findings you saw in the past few videos, combined with the emergence of AI, really brought out a sense of urgency in everyone, and they all had incredible things to say.
Yeah. Well, one, I think, is to raise this awareness. Like, I had never made that connection on it until you had mentioned that. Certainly, it's a powerful word, and it's polarizing for different reasons. But I think the one thing you have to do is to take that power back.
Our experiences, our identities are seen in such a negative light. And I think it's a testament to our histories, these histories of systems of oppression that have baked their way into every part of our society, including technology and still, continuing.
We have to understand that lesbian is not a dirty word, and it is a word that needs to be reclaimed. It's a word that's been taken from the lesbian community.
As a trans non-binary person, sometimes people go, why do you still call yourself a lesbian? It's like, that's the first title I ever had, right? So for me, it's very important, right? It's a part of my legacy. It's a part of the fight that I had. It's when I was in Chicago, we were fighting for people like me to get married. So it's a part of who I am.
Look, I think we have to be clear. The words lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer are not bad words. And also, we get to define who we are, not anybody else.
Social platforms can provide important spaces for LGBTQ folks to feel understood and accepted. But finding those communities can sometimes be akin to finding a needle in a haystack unless you know what you're looking for. And that's a big problem when you're a young person, because not knowing who you are or what you're looking for is inherent to the adolescent experience. So how can Meta, TikTok, YouTube, and other platforms provide guardrails that allow for an environment where LGBTQ spaces are created by their own communities? What can we do to change the narrative?
Holding these platforms accountable. I know how big, a lot of these tech platforms are and feel, but they're not immune to being critiqued. And they need to be, and we need to be finding our people who are in that world and dialoguing with them and essentially organizing with them.
Take the responsibility away from where it really belongs. These platforms are built, they're structured, they do certain things and they have certain rules. And that is a product, right, of what they're trying to accomplish. And so we are going to have to keep putting pressure on them to have the political will to shift it, because they can figure it out.
Whenever I think about changing a mindset, changing the perception of lesbian in the world, for example, what does that take? It takes storytelling. It takes making it more human, bringing it back to me, you, whomever, my sibling, my daughter, like making it real in a very kind, loving, familiar way. So it crowdsources social media. It just transposes this love, this care, this individuality, and leaves behind the things that are negatives.
And I think it's so important that we tell our stories, that we identify ourselves in ways that make us feel powerful. And by doing that, we're actually changing lives. You know, I'm a mom. And now as I'm raising my kid right now, it's reminding me how important it was for my mother to hear my identity and to accept it, even if she didn't understand it. That's what changes people's lives.
The large language models that are developing AI are artificial neural networks that classify definitions based on frequency and patterns. They do not have the ability to discern between an accurate depiction of the word lesbian and decades of homophobic misogyny in the mainstream media, where lesbian and bisexual identities have been repackaged together into a gross mischaracterization that serves as the subject of satire. So how can we make sure that we aren't doomed to repeat history?
I will tell you, as part of my job, responsible AI is one of the teams that I lead. This is something we're thinking about all the time, especially being a jobs platform. Hiring is fundamentally still going to be humans. AI is a reflection of the creators. So the best piece of advice I can give is we have to be a part of creating AI. AI has been around for about 50 years. Right? But it is a reflection of the creators. It learns based on human behavior. So if we want to make sure that AI doesn't have the bias of treating lesbian as a bad word or as a pornographic word, we have to be a part of the creation. We have to be a part of AI's learnings.
If you don't see powerful lesbians, how do you ever associate lesbians with power? There are a tremendous amount of us who have it. There are a tremendous amount of us who have supporters who want to give it to us. Like, there is a long road between how people may feel about it now to what they will feel like in the future. But I think the more we can actually have both data out there. So what can I do personally to have the word lesbian more associated to me? I hold a C-suite title. I do. I am an executive at the 5th largest company in America, right? Putting my name next to that word can help a Google search a little bit. It'll take a little longer than just me, but awareness of doing that and having that be part of my brand, I think, is one thing I know I personally can do, and others. And eventually it will be associated with powerful people. It's going to take time for people to see that first. So I think that's a massively unfortunate that if we don't do something different, you are right. The AI and the analytics will outpace the actual representation of what's there. So this is a huge wake-up call for myself too. But I'll give you at least one C-suite Fortune 5 woman who's happy to do it.
So when I think about AI and when I think about all the systems, I think about the fact that we have to be the ones who are investing in it, building it, directing it, and that's how we're going to make sure that they understand that these words are not negative. They are truly just as much as, any other First Amendment thing. They're truly representative of a class of people who need to continue to be respected.
As AI becomes a part of our daily lives, we have to learn from the ways that technology hasn't always served us in the past, right? The dangerous history of things like search engines that created tools to demonize us and our identities. But the good news is, you've got conferences like this with literally thousands of people that are working in the industry to make it better for us, to learn from it, and that no, it's not just the right thing to do, it is the best thing to do for businesses and companies to prepare for the future.
And I also want to say, continue to be unapologetic, just like so many of the fierce lesbians who came before, the fierce queer folks who came before and beyond. That's so key to me as a trans woman, is just remembering that the fights that we have right now are just new versions of ones that have existed for our ancestors, and they found ways to resist and continue to thrive and survive, and we can do that too.
But being comfortable with reclaiming that word, centering the word lesbian again, I think there's something really powerful about that, and that's a movement that we need to encourage folks to get around. And it's worked both for folks who identify as lesbian but maybe don't feel comfortable using that, and also folks who are allies to lesbians and want to make sure that lesbians are able to reclaim that word and have some pride and power in it.
We do have to take the word lesbian back. It's like when we took back the word queer, right? It's
We have the power to do that, but we have to become creators of AI, not just consumers.
Lesbian Visibility Week is meant as a time for lesbians to be seen, heard, and celebrated. And if you stuck with us through this entire series, wow, thank you. I will ask if you could do one last thing, and that's share the series. I know it's a lot of information, but the fact is this didn't happen overnight, and it's going to take all of us working together to fix it. Thanks.